G'day everyone, and welcome to the third episode of the Scoundrel Ring, the newly named, formerly the Ozcast, Pokemon TCG podcast for Australia. My name is Bodhi, and it's really nice of you to join me this evening, or whenever you may be listening. And joining me, as always, is Paul Coletta
How's it going, everybody?
and Alexander Bray.
Hey.
Alright guys, our show today is going to be focused predominantly on the English set revealed cards from Sun and Moon, the next Pokemon TCG expansion, dropping the 28th and 29th of January in Australia. So if you do not want to be spoiled by our reviews of about 22 cards that we're going to go through and talk about, do not listen to this podcast. And I hate to say that, but if you don't wish to be spoiled,
No, just listen to it on mute.
Yeah,
And then we get like does that work like YouTube and it's like watch minutes?
yeah,
No, they can just read the comments afterwards.
click
And get
like
spoiled that way.
and say you really enjoyed it. But if you didn't watch it, don't tell us because we'll be very disappointed.
Yeah, no
That's right,
spoilers. No
just
spoilers.
redact the
Han Solo
information.
dies in Force Awakens.
Oh no, that's worse than Snape.
Come
kills
on, it's
Dumbledore,
been
'cause
like
it was
at least a
actually
year and I
recent.
still haven't watched that.
Okay, we're
I'm
not
just
going to
kidding.
get into if Paul has or hasn't watched the new Star Wars. What we are going to get into first is our first topic, which is Pokemon TCG news from around Australia. And our first topic is that we've got some league challenges and league cups coming up. Now, guys, are you going to be heading to any league cups or league challenges in the next few weekends?
Yeah, my local one's on the 28th of January.
We have a league challenge, I think, in Miranda on the 21st, so I might hit that up. Other than that, there's nothing else over in New South Wales from what we've heard at this stage, so presumably nothing for New South Wales and Canberra for this month.
New
Okay.
South Wales, more like slow South Wales.
Well, we're always waiting on me, apparently, so I guess it is really me this time.
Well, I have two events coming up this month. So there's a league
I
challenge
bet
this
you do.
Sunday. This Sunday, I will probably be playing Greninja because I have no self-respect.
That's fair.
And then there is a League Cup on the 29th of January, which I will not be playing Greninja because I will have regained my self-respect after losing all of my rounds.
So you're going to play Gardevoir like a real man.
Yes, a real man
Okay,
plays
good.
fairies.
Yes.
We get to talk about that as well, don't we? Yeah.
Yes, we do. We are going to be able to talk now about our second topic from around the world this time, and that is the Dallas Regional Championships that have just concluded. The winner of the event piloted a Mega Gardevoir, a Steam Siege Mega Gardevoir deck. What do you guys think about the results that we saw? We saw 4 Gardevoir in Top Cut.
I think
I mean-
although we saw, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was going
No.
to say, although we saw 4 Gardevoir was it 4 Gardevoir in top 32?
No, there was 5 Gardevoir in top 32, and I thought there were 3 in top 8, but
Yeah,
basically
but like
the number was
the Gardevoir was just a direct counter to the deck, which I said was going to be doing well, and that was Mewtwo.
although
So I think
in
it was
saying
just
that-
it was a counter to the counterplay.
although in
people
saying
were-
that Gardevoir does have a really good matchup against Yveltal, and especially because you saw people playing Fairy Drop, to turn those big hits. Well, the
Yeah.
Yveltal goes for the 2-hit KO,
It's just
and this is just
it just
denying
takes
that.
but it takes the weaker matchup against Volcanion, which the Mewtwo Garbodor has a stronger chance against.
True. Although I had seen a few threads here and there with people discussing their Mega Gardevoir versus Volcanion matchups and saying that Volcanion wasn't as skewed as people thought just because of the cheap prizes you could take off of the Hoopers and the Shamans that get dropped at some stage. So, I mean, it's difficult, but it's obviously the most difficult matchup it's going to face, more likely than not. But if it's going against Mewtwo and Yveltal, which were 2 of the other bigger decks there, it's going to have a field day. And when top 32 has 12 decks being Yveltal, Garbodor, and Mega Mewtwo combined, it gives Mega Gardevoir a huge winning chance.
I think my favorite deck of like the whole thing was this guy. He had like a quad Mewtwo EX, but it was just Mewtwo EX, Max Elixir, and the idea was like it was a counter to Mega Mewtwo decks because he would just use Scattershot and load up like a Mewtwo EX with 4 Psychics, and then you just either damage swap or like Scattershot.
That's actually
Which is-
amazing.
Did you see that deck? He made top 32. I don't know what he placed. I think it was like 16th or something in the end. But like, I just remember looking at his deck list and I was like, "Are you serious? Like, that's the extent of like hard countering to a T."
It was really, I thought it was really funny to see that, honestly. And I thought of the idea when not thought of the idea, I should say. I remember bringing up the idea briefly back when Breakpoint was like first revealed, and I saw Fighting Fury Boat, and I'm like, oh man, that'd be really cool, just like damage change everything. But I think Vileplume was kind of big at the time, and it's like, oh, trying to get all these items going when Vileplume's so big is just terrible. And then someone actually brings up the courage to go into a huge tournament like that, and they're like, I'm just going to play Mewtwo with Fighting Fury Bot, and it was amazing. And I applaud that guy. I applaud them very much.
You gotta have real big cojones to play a deck like that in a several hundred person field, you know? You really gotta have confidence in your ability to play the deck well and to sort of know the limits of its matchups.
Absolutely.
I think it shows also a really big reliance that people have on pay subscription websites for our deck lists and stuff, because that Mega Mewtwo deck, the majority of them that were in cut with the Fairy Drop variant that I was talking about, that was an article that was released on Six Prizes only a couple of days before the Dallas tournament as sort of a sleeper pick, and I think it really highlights how many people actually do subscribe to some of these websites. And then what the even better players do now is just be like, well, if that was one of the most recent articles, then I'm going to make sure I can definitely beat that deck because that will get played heavily. It's what I do at local league all the time to Andrew, because he's always playing whatever's the latest deck on Six Prizes. It's the running joke, and then we just counter it.
That seems totally fair. Totally fair and balanced.
Andrew, if you're listening, he doesn't actually do that. Wink.
But I do.
Alright guys,
The
the
Andrew,
other question
when
that
I
I
think.
have to you about Dallas is the fact that there were no Volcanion and no Yveltal in the top 8. Now the top 8 rounded out with 2 Mewtwo, a Greninja, 4 Gardevoir, and help me out here, one more thing. Darkrai Giratina was the last deck.
Wait, seriously? There was a Darkrai Giratina in there?
Yes. Actually, we can talk
I
about Darkrai Giratina now if you'd like. The deck was really more Darkrai Salamence. It played 1 Giratina EX and 2 Salamence EX as well as 3 Darkrai. So he managed to make it
sense.
all the way to the top 8 of the tournament, which is a really good effort for a deck that sort of everybody had kind of ignored for at least a month now. It's sort of got absolutely no hype going into any big standard events. As Alex was saying, the big standard deck at the moment was either Yveltal, and then people were bringing Mewtwo back into the conversation in the last week or so. What do you guys think about these decks that kind of have been popular in the last few months, but kind of fall off and come back to show up to tournaments like this?
That's really just telling of the meta. It just when you meta shift like that, you allow these other decks, which are generally pretty good, they creep back in when they don't have as many difficult matchups as they normally would. Like, I mean, Evil Tolga as we saw, based on the top 32, dropped off significantly. I mean, I'm sure Mega Gardevoir can't have been a very easy matchup for them, but like Mega Mewtwo being popular, I mean, Giratina can sometimes do well against Mewtwo, just locking out their special energies and whatnot. But all it takes is a few Mega Turbos and a Hex Maniac, and can blow a Giratina out of the water. Which is why I do like the multiple inclusions of Salamence EX over Giratina, because it's a more aggressive play. But
I do think the Mewtwo decks that run both Hexmaniac and Garbodor line do much better against Giratina rather than just one or the other.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, were the fairy ones running Garbodor as well, or were they just
Yes.
like straight Mega? Okay, well there you go. So like having the one Giratina when you can, or like making your opponent believe that there's no Giratina there is, I mean, and just going aggressive with the Salamence and the Darkrai is pretty solid. And then if you can bait out their discarding of Garbodor pieces, or just rip away a Garbodor or something, you drop Giratina in the late game to sort of patch things up, then you can do really well, I feel. I mean, I still don't know how it does against Greninja. I mean, with all those pieces in there, I can't imagine Darkrai Giratina fits in that big of a guard line. Do you guys notice people playing Garble that often
I
in
believe that
those
the
decks.
list played 2-2 Garbodor. I have the list up now. He played 2-2 Garbodor.
Oh, how about that? That's
Interestingly
a lot of
enough, as
stuff.
well, Igor Costa played a 2-1 Garbodor line in his Mega Mewtwo, and it was the non-fairy drop variant. It was the
Yeah,
damage swap.
He had the psychic energies in there still. I noticed, which was very surprising.
He's still got a Hex Maniac, so 2-1 Garb and 1 Hex, and he's gone just 4 Spirit Link, which I agree with, because that was always the one card which you can't afford to miss in Mega Mewtwo decks. That's Spirit Link, because otherwise you can waste your turn completely.
Yeah.
You cannot afford
speed
this
up the
deck to see it. 4 turbos, thank God. 1 Parallel City though, and 2 Shrine of Memories.
Yeah, well, I mean, it gives him an out
pretty standard, yeah.
against.
It's only just a 2-1 Garb.
Dark Giratina takes. They usually play with lots of Parallel City or a couple of Parallel City, but they don't really use too many other stadiums, so it kind of helps there as well, just to remove Parallel City and not get locked out of a bench.
I think that the big thing to take away from this top 8 is that the meta is constantly changing. No matter where we go, we're always seeing these very different results, and I think that players are trying out a bunch of different ideas. They're trying out a bunch of crazy decks, not necessarily crazy, but they're switching away from what's popular and kind of working towards the Sun and Moon format, because there's not going to be too many more big regionals before the Sun and Moon format. There's only about 2 more over in the US before we get Sun and Moon. So being able to test all these alternate decks, how they do in a big field, and sort of being able to think critically ahead about what we may see in Sun and Moon could be where some of these players are going.
Fair call.
Alright guys, that is going to bring us now to the main point of our podcast today, and that is our review of just a little over 20 cards from the Sun and Moon set. So now I will say again before we get into it, this is a spoiler for the upcoming Sun and Moon set, so if you don't want to be spoiled, now is the time you put us on mute, you like us on Facebook, you share this post with all your friends, you say, hey guys, the Scoundrel Ring is absolutely fantastic, I can't believe how great Alex, Bodhi, and Paul all are. As is tradition. I do that to all my family every week.
Or you tell them how good you are every week.
Yes.
That is a vote of self-confidence. Why are you playing Greninja then?
Sometimes.
Oh my god. Well, every time I just think of what Michael taught us.
Michael Kahn taught us a very valuable lesson. Why play Greninja? It's a bad deck.
No, he was like, why spend all this money to travel into state just to play Greninja and lose?
It's okay, I'm going to lose in my own backyard. I'm only 10 minutes away from the event, so...
That's not too bad then. You might as well play Greninja.
I will take Michael's advice for the international and for subsequent regionals, however. I will not take Greninja, especially with the Giratina promo that will be released in the coming weeks in Australia.
Oh, man, whatever deck I play, I'm going to fit that thing in. Like, it doesn't even matter. I don't even care if I start with it. Lol, play this one card, auto win a matchup.
I feel like that card is, oddly enough, better suited for the expanded format, where Trevenant and Trevenant Break are viable because of the fact that Trevenant obviously only has 110 HP, the Trevenant from the XY base set, but when it Break evolves, which is what it generally wants to do, to get its Silent Fear and extra HP, it will then lose its item lock if you have the Giratina on the bench. So it's like, do I lose my item lock but have less HP and make myself vulnerable, or do I have more HP and try and kill that thing as quickly as possible while they have items available? So I think it's pretty strong tech against too.
It's going to be more interesting if like Greninja actually wants to start running Silent Lab just to counter that Giratina.
Couldn't they just Shadow Stitching and then not shut it off in their turn?
One Silent Lab is already relatively common in Greninja. I do believe that with the inclusion of this Giratina, that it'll probably flip the count. So we may see 3 Silent Lab and only 1 Faded Town, sort of foregoing the mega matchup. So maybe playing 2-1 Silent Lab and Faded Town, or 2-2.
It could be a case of that, yeah, but it could be a case of that whole Ranger thing where it's like just the fear of the Giratina will make people not want to play Greninja at all anyway. But one other thing is like, it's Because how's the promo getting distributed?
Blister packs. I believe they're just going through like Toys R Us or Big W or any of those sorts of stores.
So it's gonna be relatively easy for us to get our hands on.
I mean, in saying that though, people are saying, oh, Giratina is going to be around. It's going to scare people from playing Greninja, but like Garbodor exists and it flourishes in this format. People still play Greninja.
Yeah, there's a difference between the stage 1 and Ninja 2 and the basic.
That being said, though, the basic can be knocked out over the course of 2 turns in the same way that Garbodor can, and like the Giratina is pretty splashable, but it's locked out by Silent Lab, whereas Garbodor, it's just for the rest of the game. So I don't know that Giratina is just going to stop people from playing Greninja. I mean, Ranger didn't stop people from playing Jolteon, it just reduced the amount.
That's very true. Alright guys, enough Giratina talk. We're going to go into our Sun Moon talk. Last chance again. Spoilers. Alex, fix your
What is that sound?
Oh, it's gone. There we go.
It's gone sound.
Alright, as I was saying, Sun and Moon. We got 20 plus cards to talk about, guys. In the first one, we're going to go down the fantastic list that 60 cards has provided. And our first one is going to be Laurentiis Gx. Now, it is a Stage 1 GX Pokemon with 210 HP. Its first attack for a single grass energy. Attach 2 basic energy cards from your discard pile to your Pokemon in any way you like. Grass colorless for 120 that heals 30 damage. And its GX attack, which is a mechanic that can only be used once a game. This is the first and only time I will explain the sort of GX mechanic to you guys. So for future reference, when we say the GX attack, it can only be used once per game. 1 grass energy, 50 times. This attack deals 50 damage for each grass energy attached to this Pokemon, Laurentiis. Alright, starting with Paul, what do you think of Laurentiis GX?
Okay, so I like the card. I like the Pokemon. But the card has solid stats. It's a stage 1 with 210 HP. Being a grass type in this format is beneficial in that it gets access to Forest of Giant Plants, so you can have that HP buff on the very first turn of the game. And if you go second, it allows you access to accelerating energies on the first turn of the game as well. 40 damage is a bit measly, but for the first turn attack, it's not too bad. If we're looking at its second attack, which is Solar Blade, GGC for 120 and healing 30 is pretty lackluster. I mean, it looks like the format is slowly drifting over to. Sun and Moon on is looking like it may be a 2-shot format with the exception of these GX attacks. So that may not be too bad in that it can allow you to heal. I mean, healing 30 or healing any, as we can see, has been pretty helpful, especially when you've got cards like Fairy Drop being played recently, which heal 50. So that's not too bad there. And then the GX attack, I believe, is called Chloroscythe, or in Japanese, it might say Chloroscythe GX. Now, if this attack said 50 damage times the number of grass energy attached to all of your Pokemon, I feel like that would have been a far more powerful attack and far more momentum swinging. But the fact that it's only attached to that Pokemon means an overinvestment is likely. And as we've seen, these GX Pokemon, or as we will see as well coming up, these GX Pokemon are usually sporting more than 200 HP, which means that unless you play another card that we'll be looking into soon, Professor Kukui, or if you're in the expanded format having a Muscle Band, you would need 5 energy in order to deal a 1-hit knockout. And I just don't think that's very efficient, despite the fact that its first attack can attach 2 basic energy cards from the discard pile to your Pokemon in any way. One other thing to note, Mega Manectric EX from the Phantom Forces set had a similar effect for its Turbo Bolt attack, where it attached 2 basic energy cards from the discard pile to your bench Pokemon in any way you like. But the main difference there was that it dealt 110 damage, so you were generally scoring 2-hit knockouts. The difference here is that its attack that accelerates energy, while you can put them anywhere, its attack damage is only 40. So I don't see this. This Pokemon has to be paired with something, I feel, that's going to be quite powerful or can be a nice follow-up attacker. And we also need something that it can retreat to, because its 2 retreat cost is kind of average to poor, whereas Mega Manectric's 3 retreat cost allowed it to pivot into whatever it accelerated to the very next turn. So, I mean, I'm making comparisons here to that card, but at the end of the day, time will tell. I feel like it's an okay card for now, but experimentation will tell whether or not it actually plays much of a role in the format.
Well, thank you very much, Paul. It was actually a joy to listen to. You guys are very lucky out there if you're listening to the podcast. But having someone like Paul is exactly why we set up this podcast in the first place, was to bring you this kind of in-depth insight. And for our second piece of in-depth insight, it's over to Alexander Bray. Laurentiis Gx, Alex, what do you think?
Card is trash. There's my valuable insight. No. Whenever I look at cards, I'm like, okay, and I I just look at the card by itself. I look at, okay, I always just pretend it's active, and I'm like, right, I'm versing a meta deck. What do I do? So like, it's grass, and it's got access to like broken vine space, and that's sick. But then, what do you want to like partner it with? You naturally think, oh, broken vine space, I'll play Vileplume. So you can maybe do this in Vileplume, but then you're like, well, I shut off all my items. There doesn't seem to be any items which would benefit this deck directly, especially since Compressor has been rotated. So in order for you to actually quickly get the basic energy and to start energy accelerating your field, you will need to open the energy in your hand along with an Ultra Ball. Because unless I'm mistaken, there is no other way to quickly get that grass. Well, excuse me, no, it doesn't have to be grass energy, but any basic energy straight from your deck to the discard.
Yeah, the only way I can think of is like Professor's Letter and Professor Sycamore or something.
Yeah, okay, so outside of that, so that's not, yeah, because it seems very consistent to get this thing out, like, especially as a stage 1. I don't doubt that. And to be fair as well, with a thick enough Vileplume line, and with Shamans and Ultra Balls, you could probably get the Vileplume out as well, and get this thing out as well at the same time. But then you get an early game item lock, and that's fine. And let's say you do get 2 energy as well. That's fine. You attach and you deal 40, and then you either pump the Laurentiis itself, which is the difference that it has to Mega Manectric, because this thing can pump itself. And then you can go straight into your 120 attack, and that's sick. But if this thing dies, that means you have to have immediately another Laurentiis GX ready that can then energy accelerate, because you only need like the 3 grass to start off with, because then those 3 energies can just get recycled all the time. But if you combine the 40 and then the 120, it's going to be 3-shotting stuff. Unless you just dead draw your opponent with the item lock. But if you were going to play that Vileplume, I would still rather play the Jolteon, Glaceon, Regice Vileplume thing. Because not only does it have an item lock, it's also designed to prevent your opponent from even touching whatever's active. And it's more forgiving as well with some of the energy. I think I have to think about this card more, because I don't think Laurentiis by itself can be the attacker, and I don't think pairing up with Vileplume is the right answer. But I can't think of anything off the top of my head that you could abuse its first attack, because that's the crutch of this card is its first attack. But I just think there's better energy accelerators in the game, especially when we have Max Elixir.
It's interesting to note too that we will be getting an English Rayquaza promo that for a double colorless energy does 30 damage and attaches 2 basic energy from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon. It has 130 HP, is a basic normal Pokemon, and is weak to lightning. When I compare it to Laurentiis GX, I see sort of 2 positives and negatives. Laurentiis, of course, has 210 HP, which is fantastic on a stage 1 Pokemon, and it's not dying very easily in one shot. Of course, if it's up against something like a Volcanion or a Volcanion EX, it's going to just get one hit anyway, which is fine. But against other meta decks, there is nothing else out there at the moment that's going to be reliably one-shotting this card, which is Potentially a good way to abuse cards like Max Potion to heal damage off Laurentiis Gx and attach another grass energy, so you have one in your discard to attach to one of your Pokemon. When I immediately saw this card, I thought of cards like Lugia EX, the basic Lugia from Fates Collide, as well as a card that we will talk about later, Oranguru. It's got a very Mega Manetric feel to it, where you can play it with different types of energy. You can play your deck with double colorless energy, so you can attach those and attach with Laurentiis. People are going to experiment a lot with this card when we go into Sun and Moon. There's going to be some weird versions. I can already tell we're going to get people trying to play this with a different water Pokemon or different electric Pokemon going forward. It'll be interesting to see which one comes out on top. We're going to move on now. So the next card to talk about, we're going to talk about this one just a little bit quicker, I think, guys, maybe, hopefully.
Oh, we'll try.
So, Shiinotic. 100 HP grass, stage 1 Pokemon again, the ability to use Forest of Giant Plants. It has an ability, once during your turn, you may search your deck for a grass Pokemon, show it to your opponent, and put it into your hand. Shuffle your deck afterwards. Its attack is nothing to write home about. It's grass colorless for 30 damage, and your opponent's active Pokemon is now asleep. We'll start with Alex this time. What do you think of Shiinotic, especially in the kind of decks you described earlier, like Vileplume, Laurentiis?
Yeah, it has more synergy with Vileplume because it's obviously an ability. 100 HP is kind of annoying. If it was 90, it'd be very, 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 very good because then you could level ball for Oddish Gloom. What's the basic of this thing? More lull and Shiinotic itself, but what you can get. And what's its retreat as well? Is it 2? So you can't even heavy ball for it. But I think under an item lock, it's got a good search. But once again, it's just there's no really good grass attacker still. Like Best Bitcoin is not as good, anywhere near as good as it used to be. I think maybe if you play, you try and fit it in some sort of like Mega Vileplume, because since there's obviously lots of tools still in the format. But then you're asking for a lot of evolutions of grass types, so I definitely think it has a lot of potential.
Paul, what do you reckon?
Well, for those of you who played in the Heartgold or Silver era, you'll see very distinct similarities to the Sunflora from the Heartgold or Silver base set, which had pretty much the same ability. The main difference here being that this has 100 HP, as Alex had mentioned. It's really not fantastic to have 100 because of the lack of being able to use Liver Ball, and having one less retreat than 3 means lack of access to Heavy Ball. Obviously, we'll be getting a new card coming up, which we will be discussing further on, which allows you to search out evolution cards, but this card in and of itself, I feel, is pretty simple. I actually think it works better with another card we're going to talk about soon, Serena, just because of the ability that that has as well. And I feel like Forest of Giant Plants is really the only reason this thing would remotely see play, just because you can start thinning your deck out of grass Pokemon very quickly. I honestly don't see this card being played very much right now, just because of the amazing trainer cards that we have access to at this stage. So this might be one to keep in mind for maybe later down the track when we potentially see a shift to a Sun and Moon on meta. But right now, I just don't think this card's strong enough. Like, I think it's decent. I think it works with maybe one type. But like, if you were to use it with something like Laurentiis Gx, then you start having multiple stage 1s, then you have less space for other cards like other attackers. So don't see this being used very much right now.
Yeah, I think this card's got a lot of potential to be good in the future, depending on how much more they want to focus on grass Pokemon. There is a lot of grass focus in this Sun and Moon base set, more so than pretty much any other type in the Sun and Moon set. So I think with a card like Serena and with a card like Laurentiis and with Vileplume potentially too, that it does certainly have potential, and people will try it when the set first comes out. We are going to move on now to talk about Serena though. It's 140 HP grass stage 2. Its ability, once during your turn when you play this card from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, you may use this ability. Look at your opponent's hand and discard one card you find there. Its attack, Grass, double colorless, for 80 damage, and heals 20 damage and removes all special conditions from this Pokemon. Paul, what do you think about Serena?
Right now, I think it's either an all-in gimmick which will work amazingly, or just a flat-out terrible card. Like, I don't see it really being any intermediate there. So, obviously, with ability lock, such as Garbodor and Hex Maniac, that would turn off the abilities of evolutions. If we see a constant stream of ability lock, then this card doesn't have a place in the meta. However, if this card can get going on turn one before the opponent is able to stop any abilities, I feel like it can swing a game way too quickly, and it's potentially a little bit unhealthy for the format. Now, only because we have that Forest of Giant Plants, or Broken Vine Space, as we affectionately like to call it, do I think this card is any good. When that card rotates, I really wouldn't pay too much mind. But right now, because we have access to Forest of Giant Plants, along with the Devolution Spray and Puzzle of Time, just cards like that, I just think this card is potentially a gimmick worth using. But again, we'll have to see if people adjust themselves and their decks to being able to counteract this sort of a strategy, or if we find this overpowering in a similar sense to the expanded Shiftry from Next Destinies along with Forest of Giant Plants. I don't know that it'll be that good though, just because we don't have cards like Super Scoop Up, but I do feel like it could have an impact in that vein. So, something worth waiting for. Its attack, terrible.
Alex, what do you think about Serena?
Yeah, it would have only been good if Ainsley was still in the format.
We do have Devolution Spray in the format.
Nah, doesn't work. You want to do what I want to do in this deck is turn one red card, get the Vileplume out, get this thing evolved, and try and like mill their hand to zero. Then it's like for later game that you want the AZ. Because you want to get rid of their hands, but when everyone's running really low support accounts, still 4 Sycamore, but then like 2 ends, so you have like 6 outs of your whole deck. But then decks have like Ultra Balls for Shamans or Trainer's Mail, you know. That's the kind of stuff you want to stop, which you can do with Vileplume, but you need to like reuse the effect of this thing, and you can't do that with the Evolution Spray. Vileplume's out, so it's still 1 AZ. And then also just, it has what, 2 retreat and an awful attack, like Paul was saying.
I definitely do see a use for it. There is potential, of course, for it in Expanded with cards like Battle Compressor. I think actually in Expanded it's going to be quite strong. There is an Absol promo coming out that allows you to look at either your own or your opponent's top 4 cards and order them in any way that you like once per turn. So being able to discard cards from your opponent's hand and then manipulate their draw further after that might prove very strong and Expanded, but we'll have to wait and see. Alright, moving on now. We're going to go right down the list until we land on Vika Vault. 150 HP Lightning Stage 2 Pokemon. Once during your turn, its ability, you may search your deck for 1 Grass and 1 Lightning Energy and attach them to your Pokemon in any way you like. Shuffle your deck afterwards, and its attack, Lightning, colorless, 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 so 4 energy total. Discard 3 energy, attach this Pokemon for 150 damage. Alex, what do you think about this Vika Vault?
If Charger Bug was a grass, it'd be okay. But once again, just lots of engines in this set, lots of energy accelerators, but so far I haven't seen anything worth being the big hitter. It reminds me, there was another set, I can't remember, but I specifically remember there was this one set as well that had all these things that were like the energy accelerators, but it was just always missing that big hitter. I think it was the fairy archetype for a really long time. I felt just never had had all these things, all these tools at its disposal, like Fairy Garden and Aromatisse, and just even Slurpuff to an extent, just all these different fairy type Pokemon that had so much support for that archetype, but just it never had the actual main attacker. And I look at this Vika Vault, And Vika Vault is obviously not the thing you want to attack with because its attack is trash, but you're like, that's a sick ability. But what do you want to put? It has to be a grass and a lightning energy. And I know there is one card in this set, Dragonite, whether that's what we talk about next or whatever, but that attack is still not warranted enough for me to play both that line, that stage 2 line, as well as the Vika Vault line as well. So it might be laying the groundwork for a future grass or lightning basic EX attacker in maybe upcoming sets that might be able to accommodate this Vika Vault more.
Paul, what do you reckon about Vika Vault?
Like Alex said, actually, it's Forest of Giant Plants. Mild inaccessibility is probably a good thing as well, because if we were able to have this thing go off on the first turn, there's no telling what kind of power it could have in the format. I think just because of the fact that Charger Bug is a lightning type as opposed to a grass type makes it unfortunately too slow right now, which means you would probably have to rely on Candy, although you could do some janky thing where you do use Grubbin, which is a grass type, evolve into Charger Bug on the first turn to have that bit of an extra HP buff, and then on the second turn evolve into Vika Vault. But I think the big problem there is getting out this thing, which you rely on its ability in order to actually do anything meaningful. And then, of course, the more abilities that come into play, and the less tool removal that we keep not getting, the better Garbodor is going to be, and the worse these abilities are going to end up being, of course. So I like it. I think you can do something weird. I mean, Alex mentioned Dragonite. I think this type of a card functions well with those dragons, and even to some extent something like Dratini EX, which uses grass and a psychic type energy. But then, of course, with double dragon energy, you can cover the remainder of that cost. So, you can see some like unusual strategies unfolding there. Unfortunately, I think as much as ideal as it may look to pair it with something like Dragonite, having 2 stage 2s in this kind of a format is incredibly slow. And I know that the format has, it's still speedy. The format's still fast, but it's still just too slow to have 2 stage 2s of completely different lines try and set themselves up. And if they don't do anything meaningful, which, well, Dragonite doesn't take one hit knockouts on things, not very easily, then it's just not worth it. So I like Vika Vault. We'll wait again on this one. I think this one has potential later on.
I know we throw the word potential around a lot, but it's much better that at least you can use this ability while it's on the bench.
Very much so.
Yeah, that's very much true.
Yeah, the way that I think about this card is that when we get GX for Vika Vault, perhaps in the Sun Moon 2 set, there's a chance that it gets a little better. But until then, I can see people trying it out. But if you can only use it on the second turn, and then your opponent gets Garbodor, you're not really going to be able to do much. Maybe you can Lysand to kill the Garbodor because you have 4 energy down already, but I don't see it being good yet. Alright guys, moving on now. We're going to go down again, and this time we are going to be talking about a Lowland Muck, the paddle pop. I don't know if anyone from overseas, do they have paddle pops in other countries? Maybe.
As long as they have rainbow flavored ice cream, then they should be fine. They should understand
They'll know.
The comparison there. Yeah.
Right, so Alolan Muck is a stage 1 psychic Pokemon with 120 HP. All basic Pokemon in play, both players' hands, and both players' discard piles have no ability. That is Alolan Muck's ability. Its attack is Psychic, double colorless for 90 damage. If you hit heads, you discard an energy card attached to your opponent's active Pokemon.
Why are we reading this thing's attack?
Who knows? You want to read it for... We're not a visual podcast, we're an audio podcast. So you gotta read it out. It's got 4 retreat cost.
4 retreat cost is nice.
You can search for it with Heavy Ball. Alex, what do you think about Alolan Muck?
This is good. Lots of Shaman's obvious, but then also the Oranguru that's also in this set. But all the basic Pokemon that have abilities are usually supporting abilities anyway. They're not the crutch of the deck strategy, but they're just the support. All the decks that have like heavily used abilities for the actual strategy. Mind you, actually, this could be for maybe I like it, but I'm trying to think like does Sizzle play it to try and stop Volcanion a little bit? But really, it's just the baby Volcanion that's still going to be pumping up the big EX in the back. That could slow it down quite a lot. But the Volcanion can do it, some of its shenanigans in the first turn, and this Muck is going to take 2 turns to get out. I think it helps, obviously, a late game end 2 or something, and then you have Muck out. It just removes Shaman from the equation, but it's probably all I can think off the top of my head.
Paul, I'm going to ask you a question about this card. So, is it a worse Garbodor?
It's a different Garbodor. It's not worse. And the reason I say that is because having 4 retreat means it's definitely Lysandre bait, which means you probably want to play Floatstone anyway. But it has more HP, and the attack is unlikely to be used regardless. But once again, you don't require Floatstone to play this card, and that's an important because you could play this card down in a Mega Mewtwo deck, and all of a sudden you have access to your Spirit Links. You don't have to worry about fitting. I mean, you probably have to still fit in switching cards, but you can potentially reduce the amount of cards you need to play in your deck in order to actually get this thing going. Turning off Fright Night, I think, is one of the big things that this card will do, and it'll allow. And I mean, depending on what type of a break deck you're playing, but it's almost certainly going to just be Greninja right now. It's a way to turn off Fright Night setup from Shaman EX. I feel like there's another big ability on a basic Pokemon that we have right now.
Volcanion.
Volcanion EX, yep, so that's a big one as well. Think about this, right? Putting this into a Mega Gardevoir deck, even as just a 1-1, stops them from spamming Steam Up, and they can't just, like, if tool removal was to come in, they can't have to drag Volcanic Heat or something, and then if you decide you no longer hit, you can just get rid of it yourself with Despair Ray for an extra 10 damage. Plus, the ball if you really need it to. So, and of course, having more HP means that it's less susceptible to being knocked out than Garbodor is, because 100 HP is annoying. Like, it's easy to knock out. For Mega Mewtwo, it's 3 energy, whereas for Mega Mewtwo to knock out this thing, it's 4 energy. I mean, Mega Sizzle still hits it in the face for a 1-hit knockout, but like it's a little bit harder for Volcanion to knock out too, because the baby Volcanion will cap at 110 damage, whereas Garbodor, they can just knock out the Garbodor with the baby Volcanion anyway. So it has its uses, but I think it actually, right now, just from the Sun and Moon cards we've seen, if it was a Sun and Moon on set, obviously there'd only be one set, but it might get worse as we have less XY sets, because we may have less of a basic focus. So this card is in a weird spot. I feel like players should mess around with it a bit and see how it affects their deck building. I think this is more of a card for deck building. Can you get away with less Floatstones? Can you get away with a smaller line? That's where this is different to Garbodor.
I think this card sucks. I think it is useless in the standard format. I think it will absolutely see no play whatsoever. Quote me on that.
Ripperino.
I am happy to be wrong, but I am of the opinion that this card is useless in comparison to Garbodor. It does not fit anywhere that Garbodor doesn't already fit. in my opinion. So that is what I think about a Lowland Muck. We're going to move down.
It's like we said though, they're just laying the groundwork for future formats and go
Definitely
blah blah. That's rotate.
And it's good to see too, just as a quick tangent, that they are working hard to push a future format, and you can see that they're laying the foundations for a new format, especially. That's good. There's been a lot of complaints about this format. There's been a lot of complaints about cards or lack thereof cards in this format, and I think they're doing a good job working towards it.
Okay, so the next card we're going to talk about, guys, is Nebby. It's got 60 HP. It's a basic. And for one colorless,
Who let
gets in
him
the
take
bag.
over?
Draw a card. I think this is really strong. Especially the attack name, get in the bag. I think it's a great card. Thoughts?
I really like Nebby, actually. Yeah, I think it's
You get in the
probably
bag.
it's a 2 of in every deck, I reckon. Like
could you imagine?
Really
Could you imagine opening this in the pre-release? You'd be like, just get in the bag, and then you draw, and it's just sick. Go second, win, and then you just evolve into Cosmoem, next turn, and then you just switch with the attacker that you've been pumping. It's great.
I swear, guys, we are a professional podcast occasionally. Sometimes.
Alright, what we are going to talk about is Lunala GX, which is a Stage 2 Psychic Pokemon. Its ability, as often as you like during your turn, you may move a Psychic Energy attached to one of your Pokemon to another of your Pokemon. First attack is 4 Psychic for 120, and the opponent's Pokemon cannot heal. And its GX attack is 3 Psychic, and you choose one of your opponent's basic Pokemon. They can be active, they can be on the bench, and that Pokemon is knocked out of the game. So, Paul, what do you think about Lunala GX?
Just a few clarifications to some major clarifications here. You said the opponent's Pokemon can't heal. It's the Pokemon that's hit by the attack. So obviously, if it was all of their Pokemon can't heal, it would be a much stronger attack because it would mean that they couldn't heal anything that was even on the bench. And the other thing as well, the GX attack does indicate that you can't knock out Pokemon GX either, which will be more important as we get more and more basic Pokemon GX coming into the format. Other than that, I think this card is terrible. As much as it pains me to see it, because I love the color purple and I love to see Psychic Pokemon thrive, the energy costs for its attacks are awful. Especially like its GX attack with an effect like that you'd think would be good, but for a cost like that, unless you're accelerating, which we don't have Psychic acceleration, it's not going to pan out. The ability is obviously good. We have seen this type of an ability on Stage 2s before, but of course, Psychic Energy doesn't seem like it will play much of a role coming into the new format. What I can say is that this card, I believe the designers were meaning to obviously pair it with its Sun counterpart, Solgaleo GX. And the reason I say that is because of the GX attack that Solgaleo GX has, which we will discuss briefly. But the other thing to keep in mind, and this is one of the big spoilers, of course, for those of you who haven't completed the game, is that both Lunala GX and Solgaleo GX are Stage 2 Pokemon, which evolve from the same line of Cosmog and Cosmoem. So Lunala can, of course, slip into the same deck because it has the same base to work with. So it's a little bit easier than, say, when we were discussing Vika Vault and Dragonite before. So this card, I believe, was designed to work in conjunction with Solgaleo GX, but its attacks I wouldn't pay much heed to at this stage because I just don't see a feasible way of using them.
Alex, what do you think of Stage 2 Nebby?
I actually really like it. I think the way I would want to play this deck is with Giratina EX and Double Dragons and Heavy Max Elixir again. And you just switch out Darkrai and Dark Energies. Now you just make it Giratina and Psychic Energies. And you pump the Giratina with Psychic Energies and try and get this thing out. And you can move the Psychics and the Double Dragons. As long as you're moving Double Dragons between 2 Giratinas, it allows you to max pop. Move it straight back. Play it like the old Laurentiis Fairy decks. But the difference is those Laurentiis decks in the past never had Max Elixir, which is like the most broken card. So I actually really like it. And then you have this huge clutch attack right at the end. Although you can't move double dragons onto it, fair. But you've still, I reckon you can at least keep 3 psychics on the field. And then when you're down to your last 2 prizes, you're like, I'll kill that EX, I win. And then you obviously I would run Fairy Garden as my standing of choice in this deck. So everything has like 3 retreats as long as there's a double dragon.
I hadn't thought of it like that, actually. That's very interesting. It definitely does give off the vibe of a card that can be used in these sort of toolbox style decks, and especially abuse the double dragon energy as well. I think the GX attack is too good to dismiss. Just pick one of your opponent's Pokemon. They can be on the bench as long as it's a basic. It's knocked out. That is absolutely fantastic. It will find a place somewhere. Maybe it needs more cards before it can create a toolbox deck like the one that Alex suggested, but I think I have some hope for it. We're going to move on now to the other legendary in the Sun and Moon series, Solgaleo EX, also with 250 HP. It's metal. Its ability, I think, is called Burning Road, and once during your turn, you may switch your active Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. So its ability allows you to switch once per turn. Its first attack is Metal Colorless Energy for 230 damage. On a 3 energy attack, that is ridiculous. It discards all energy attached to this Pokemon. Its GX attack searches your deck for 5 energy cards. That's energy cards, it can be special energy, and attach them to your Pokemon in any way you like for 1 metal. Alex, what do you think about Solgaleo? Where do you see it fitting in the Sun and Moon series?
This is the biggest troll. Like they released this after Bronzong rotates, like an ability that also makes it switch. Like, are you kidding me? Like they are having massive laughs over in like TPCI, honestly. Like, could you actually imagine if Bronzong was still in format? Because like if it was, I'd be playing this. No matter what, I would make it work. Like 2 metals and colors for 230, and an ability that lets me like Keldeo. Like, what even is this? Because you're like, oh, but they could Garbodor. Yeah, but if they got Garbodor up, you would lose anyway. Because you run on whatever. Like, I would just cop that. Like, it'd be so worth it.
In the Japanese set, it's interesting to know that they play X and Y on for their format, which gives them access to both tool removal and Bronzong. Do you think this deck's going to be popular and expanded?
Oh, hell yeah. Well, look, this is just what I think, but just its energy cost is too low. Like, it's too tempting. I only need 2 Bronzongs. Come on.
Paul, what do you reckon?
I love this card. I love everything about it. I really like the Pokemon Solgaleo, so this is fantastic for me to see. Ultra Road is a better Keldeo EX, which is fantastic because it lets you switch any one of your Pokemon. It doesn't even have to be itself. Sunsteel Strike is basically a knockout on any Pokemon in the current metagame, excluding Wailord EX, Solgaleo GX itself, Lunala GX, and I feel like that's it. Oh, and maybe anything that's got 220 or more HP and have a metal resistance. And even then, this thing can still reach 250 damage using, again, the supported card Professor Kukui. So Sunsteel Strike, which is its 230 damage attack, fantastic. And I love its GX attack for many reasons, but the main one being, of course, it's an immediate effect. It sets up your board, and your opponent has to respond to it, otherwise they will get beat down. You can't stop it with abilities. You can't stop it with Pokemon Ranger. The attack will happen, and that is the perfect example of what I think a GX attack should be. Swinging the momentum in such a fantastic way that it forces your opponent to respond, or else you will take control of the game very quickly. And that's why I like this card. Being a stage 2 obviously hurts a little bit, but with a card as good as this, or at least I feel like it's very good, and it doesn't even rely on its own ability. It's not something that's necessary for it to play. And finally, of course, 3 retreat cost, heavy ball accessible. I mean, we've got Ultra Ball. People have played these stage 2 decks with only Ultra Ball in times gone past. But I mean, 1 retreat would have been better, 3 retreat would have been better, but 3 retreat means you've got access to that. And of course, the fact that Soul Burst GX lets you search for 5 energy cards, any energy cards, that's how it pairs in perfectly with Lunala. Obviously, both evolving straight from Cosmog. You can search out Rainbow energies, Double Dragon energies, Shield energies, Metal energies, Psychic energies, whatever you want. And Lunala can be there to move them around and spam the ever-living crap out of Max Potion. So I really like this card.
Just thinking about it, is this actually the partner for the what was the first thing we talked about? Its name?
Laurentiis Gx.
Is this the partner for Laurentiis that we're all just too retarded? Like, if it switches itself as well, like this thing can push itself from back to the bench, then Laurentiis swings with the grass, and then it's going to pump this thing with like 2 metals or a metal and a grass.
It can also switch Laurentiis as well.
Yeah, that's what I meant. So, like, you can push it back to the bench, and then it gets pumped, and then it also deals 40 to the active, and then you can come back in with this thing next turn after manually attaching to it because it already had 2 energy on it.
You may be onto something here, Alex, actually. That is a...
And I was thinking more so, like, this is the type of deck that would want to use that muck as well, because all of its abilities. This thing's not obviously a basic, and it also helps against Volcanion, because this is the type of thing that needs to stop Volcanion, because otherwise you have a grass attacker, and you have a metal attacker, so you would really actually want to use the muck. Because I don't see any tools.
Solgaleo GX can actually withstand potential, like if you have ability lockup with a Lowland Muck, you could potentially withstand a one-hit knockout from Volcanion EX as well. With few shenanigans like Reverse Valley or Shield Energy, you can push yourself above 260 HP effectively. And then when you Sunsteel Strike and remove all of your energies to knock out a Volcanion EX, and they don't knock you out back, Max Potion, do it all again.
There's a couple of other ways too. I mean, of course, being a stage 2, but it doesn't. You could play cards like Weakness Policy. Tools don't get removed in this format, as we know, and there's also a stadium coming called Altar of the Sun that gives Metal Pokemon and Fire Pokemon no weakness.
So I forgot about Weakness Policy. Yeah, it's a much better idea.
There is more hope for cards like that going forward. All right, I think we all discovered something pretty interesting about Solgaleo there, so we're gonna move.
I just threw away what I'm playing now. Crap.
Yeah, god damn it.
That was silly, Alex.
So, guys, I've added Skarmory to the list here because it has a very interesting first attack. Skarmory is a basic Pokemon with 110 HP. It's metal. For a double colorless energy, or for 2 colorless, it discards all special energy cards attached to all of both players' Pokemon. Now, hear me out on this one. Skarmories have always had these weird discarding attacks. Its EX form in the X and Y series discarded tools attached to your opponent's Pokemon. And there have been Skarmories in the past that discard specific things off your Pokemon. Alex, what do you think about the ability to potentially discard 2, 3, 4 special energy off your opponent's board at any one time with just 2 energy?
Well, the only decks that play special right now are Yveltal, but Yveltal can easily play around it and not have to attach DCE. Or not only that, when they do attach DCE, it can then possibly be a knockout on this thing in one go. The only deck it would really, really hurt would be like big Giratina variants, but if they're playing Giratina and they've already Chaos Wheeled, you can't attach a DC to this thing and do it in one turn because you want surprise factor. The other deck would be like the Vileplume toolbox. This would punish that massively. Just get rid of all our energies. I think once again it's another laying the groundwork sort of card. May have just chucked it in here and went, okay, we're going to be releasing some more unconventional cards or more risky OP cards in the future. But if they are too overpowered, it doesn't matter because we released the Skarmory to keep it in check anyway.
Before I ask you, Paul, the reason that I have included this card is because there are lots of energy manipulation variants and variants that rely on special energy that have been popping up relatively recently. Vileplume is not all that popular over in the States at the moment. However, with Laurentiis and with all of the hype going around grass Pokemon, Vileplume definitely is going to be seeing more play in many different versions. And I see this as a card that can be played in Yveltal itself as a counter to the mirror match and as a surprise factor as well with Max Elixir, being able to ditch 2 or 3 double colorless in the first game of a best of 3 series or even a best of 1 series, depending on where you play, is definitely has the ability to swing a matchup. And there's cards that this synergizes well with, of course, like Raticate in evolutions and cards like that. Being able to use Team Flare Grunt on your opponent's active Pokemon if they have a special energy and a regular energy. You can get rid of their regular energy and then Skarmory away the special energy. Paul, what do you think?
Anything that discards energy is my friend. But enough about that. I think it's really funny that we talk about Solgaleo and Lunala GX, and the very next card we talk about potentially just hard counters both of them depending on how you play them. So, I mean, it's a tech card for sure, and generally only should really be seeing one of in decks. But depending on how special energy intense the meta gets, this card just gets better and better. So obviously, if you get decks that rely too much on special energy, like for example the Team Plasma deck back in 2013, then you could see those type of decks potentially have a lot of trouble when someone decides to take this in and just shred your entire field and set you back to square one. So I like this card, but it is a tech card, and I believe it should strictly stay as such because its second attack is not really worth speaking of, just because, well, anything that requires a flip in order to deal substantial damage generally isn't worthwhile, except for, I guess, Malamar EX, because that's always fun.
All right, we're going to go on and talk about a whole evolution line now. So we're going to be talking about Dratini, the 60 HP Dragon Pokemon, Dragonair, the 90 HP Dragon Pokemon, and Dragonite, the 160 HP Stage 2 Dragon Pokemon. Specifically, their basic and the Stage 1 have very interesting attacks. So Dratini's attack, search a deck for one Dragonite, Dragonair, or Dratini, and then shuffle your deck. Quickfire. Paul, what do you think about Dratini?
I like it, and a basic that can search out its evolutions is a very good card to swing the momentum in your favor, forces your opponent to respond to it. Although at the same time, it also tips your hand as to what you could potentially do next turn. So it's a double-edged sword, but I think it's a good for a basic Pokemon that evolves.
Alex, what do you reckon?
It's like the most broken line. If you get this line, like at least a 1/1/1 or even a 2/2/2, like you'll just win the pre-release. Like nothing will beat this. But that's all this guy. Let's be real. Like this is all this does. Like it's just really good. I was discussing with Paul last week before I went off. It wasn't on the podcast, but like the Dragonair, like yeah, it looks clutch. Like during your next turn, you can attach as many energy cards from your hand to your Pokemon, but like you only get to do that once because this Dragonair is going to get knocked out the next turn. It's got 90 HP. So be like, I think if there is any sort of competitive use, it'll never include the Dragonite, and it'll only ever include just up to the Dragonair. And the idea will be some big play because you want to turn one, get the Dratini, and then turn 2, get this Dratini to the active evolved Dragonair, then use that attack, and then turn 3, that's when you've got some sort of big attacker that's going to be able to just either destroy the active or actually like take multiple prizes or something like that, or just some sort of very, very strong attack. Because the good thing is it's next turn, so you can attach all the energy in your hand, then play a Sycamore, and then draw more cards and more energy, and play all that energy as well.
That's very true. I want to also point out that your opponent playing Pokemon Ranger does reduce your energy attaching down to 1 for the following turn.
Just as per normal. I feel like Dragonair. I only touched on Dratini, but I feel like we've moved on to Dragonair though. I believe the attack is Dragon Prayer, but basically for one colorless, it can allow you to attach as many energy, not just basic, but any type, from your hand as to your Pokemon as you like. An important thing to note, Bodhi did just mention that obviously Pokemon Ranger would remove that effect, but Garbodor would not, or X-Maniac would not turn off the effect, as it is the effect of an attack. So that's where it has advantages over something like Vika Vault. Now, I feel like Roaring Skies actually gives us a few tools to work with this Dragonair, whether they're a gimmick or not. But we have Wally, of course, which is the supporter card that on any given turn, you may use it on any of your basic Pokemon that can evolve into, I suppose, a stage 1 or a stage 1 into a stage 2, excluding Pokemon EX. So you could, on the first turn, potentially evolve Dratini into Dragonair, and if you've gone second, use its Dragon Prayer attack, allowing you to set up for the second turn flood of energy. And then, of course, you've got cards like Professor's Letter and Puzzle of Time and whatnot in order to put energies back into your hand for the following turn. And, of course, the other tool that this type of deck could potentially use, Alex was saying that we only potentially see up to the Dragonair, but Dragonite from Roaring Skies, the one with the Delta Plus ability, ancient trait, allows it to take multiple prize cards when it knocks out a Pokemon, and it does have an attack for 160 damage. So we
150.
150, sorry.
I just brought up it's 160 health.
That's right. So the health is good. The attack is a little bit.
3 grass, 1 lightning, and 1 colorless. Heavy impact.
Yep. And obviously, I mentioned Professor Kukui, so I really can't wait to get to that card. But that could potentially be buffed to 170, possibly a little bit more if you mess around with some of that Golbat action. The Golbat from Generations obviously dropping 2 damage counters when it evolves with its ability. So not necessarily the best partner, but one of many potential options.
Yeah, I agree. We'll just quickly mention this Dragonite here. Its attack for 5 colorless energy does 200 damage, but flip a coin if Tails' attack does nothing. That is a lot to bank on there. You're banking on the coin flip to do 200 damage. And its first attack is just a single grass and lightning energy for 130. Discard both the energies attached to this Pokemon. Alright, moving on now. I just want to quickly mention before we go into the next card that, as we have already alluded to before, the Eevee from this set is not a direct reprint, but it has the same ability as the Furious Fist Eevee, Energy Evolution. So once during your turn, when you attach a basic energy from your hand to this Pokemon, you may search your deck for a card that evolves from Eevee with the same type as the energy card. So you can do this on the first turn of the game, giving you a card like Umbreon GX, which is a 200 HP Darkness GX, Stage 1. Its first attack for Dark Energy does 30 damage, and you may switch this Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. Its second attack is Night Spear, except perhaps slightly better than Night Spear, as it is Dark Double Colorless. This attack deals 30 damage to one of your opponent's benched Pokemon, and it does 90 damage base. Its GX attack for a Dark and a Colorless chooses 2 energy cards attached to your opponent's Pokemon and discards them. Alex, quickfire, what do you think about Umbreon GX?
I'm actually really undecided on this card. I've thought for quite a while. I'll hand pass to Paul first.
Alright, Paul, what do you reckon?
Once again, if it energy discards, I like it. But in saying that, this thing energy discards off of its GX attack. But you get to choose any 2 you want off their field. Pretty strong because it can snipe basic energy, snipe special energy, doesn't matter. As long as they're on the opponent's field, you can get them. Now, if this is the only GX attack that you're going to have in your deck, not bad to use. It's Night Spear attack, I suppose you could call it. I think it's underwhelming because look at the damage, look at the HP cap we're seeing on these Pokemon. I mean, these GX Pokemon are all hitting 200 or more. And, I mean, I'm not going to say Kukui again. I have said it many times, but Obviously,
I
you
just
can.
wish it did damage, like even a small amount.
I mean,
Because the
90.
thing's only becomes broken if you can knock, even if it's one price, you knock something out and get to discard the two energies. It's the whole like why cyclone thing. You knock out the active, but you move your energy to the bench. So when their revenge hit, you've still got the energy on the field. Like you wanna knock something out with Umbreon, and then be able to hit something on the bench or get rid of two energies from their bench. Because otherwise, it's like okay, I won't do any damage. I'll leave your active there, and I'm either going to discard the energies on the active to prevent you from attacking me, maybe, or I get rid of your bench. But if I get rid of your bench energy, you're going to hit me with the active. Like,
It's definitely something that you play smartly with. Obviously, you use Shadow Bullet, which is its Night Spear attack bird, the one that does 90 and then 30 to one of the bench Pokemon. You use that in a way that you set up particular Pokemon to have to come active, and then you can use the GX attack to shred away energies, and then force them into a position where they send up something that's weakened, may not knock out Umbreon in one hit, and then you can take multiple KOs with Shadow Bullet from there. One last note I feel I want to make: its first attack for only 30 for one Dark Energy only does 30 damage, but it does allow you the opportunity to switch Umbreon out of the active spot. So potentially on the first turn, you could get a little bit of chip damage and run back to the bench and send up something beneficial, such as the Friday Evil Tile from Breakthrough. So a bit of versatility there. I feel like this card, I mean, in a similar sense to Alex, I'm undecided, but I know that the card can do well given particular circumstances. So this is one of those wait and see ones, I feel.
Yeah, I think it's got quite a lot of potential. The ability to strafe itself to the bench is quite good, and cards like Wobbuffet as well could potentially be good with this kind of ability to set it up for the next turn, shutting your opponent off from items. We're gonna go ahead now and talk about Espeon GX. It's a 200 HP Psychic GX. First attack is one Psychic for 30. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now confused. Second attack, Psychic Double Colorless for 60 plus 30 damage times the number of energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. GX attack, Psychic Double Colorless, put 10 damage counters, that is 100 damage total, on your opponent's Pokemon in any way you like. Paul, you don't like this card.
Card's bad. Like, its first attack, I mean, you confuse them, sure, but unlike Umbreon, you don't get it out of the active, so you leave it vulnerable. On the first turn, maybe it doesn't get knocked out, but it doesn't have the same versatility over the course of the game as Strafe does, so functionally worse. Its second attack for PCC, I mean, you do 30 more, but that depends on how many energy are on the opponent. Again, if Sun and Moon moves to a two-shot format, like it looks like it kind of will, then this attack is not terrible, especially because we still have double colorless floating around. But it's just it's a
so
head.
stupid. This is the thing that needed Night Spear. Like, why did they give Night Spear to like Umbreon? This is the thing that needed the like damage on active, damage on bench. And
Yeah,
it's like,
absolutely.
no, we'll give this thing the evil ball. Like,
Yeah,
it doesn't
well,
make any
I mean,
sense.
it's not even evil ball. It's a functionally worse evil ball because it doesn't
Yeah.
even include its own energy, and the energy cost is very heavy for its base damage. So I don't like
Because
that.
it's like,
And
oh
its
yeah,
GX,
I want to spread damage, so then like whatever comes active, I can hit harder with my like worse X ball. But you know what I mean? It's just so stupid.
maybe the GX attack, maybe it sees some play. Like 10 damage
Oh
counters
yeah,
doesn't
that's
seem
that's
enough.
the only that's the only reason I'm like looking at this card is its GX attack because I think putting 10 damage counters on wherever you like is really good, and the cost of the attack isn't too high either. One psychic in a DCE, that's very easy to do, but like the circumstances, because this thing has to win you the game. Like when you use this GX attack, it has to be for game, and it's
Oh,
like
or yeah, like because people can potion up, but like the thing is, the GX attack just. I have said this, and I'll say it again. GX attacks, I feel like, need to swing momentum in a powerful enough way because you can only use one GX attack. So like we've seen Lunala GX, where you can take an instant knockout. We've seen Solgaleo GX, where you can accelerate a bunch of energies. Like this attack is, I mean, damage counter manipulation is nice, but it's just not great. I think I've given this card too much attention. I'm gonna move off it. You guys can have at it.
I don't think it's very good. I think potentially there's a chance 100 damage, 10 damage counters is good, I guess. If maybe we had Crobat back in the format, it would be okay, but even then, not really. Alright, moving on.
Worth it.
Oranguru, basic 120 HP Pokemon. Its ability, once during your turn, you may draw cards until you have 3 cards in your hand. Its attack for 3 colorless energy does 60
Why are we
damage.
reading its attack?
Its attack's pretty good.
Because they can't see it, and for this thing, it's actually not terrible.
Spoiler.
It does 20 damage for each energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. But the important thing is the ability. Alex.
I love this card. So good. I'm like going to play this all the time. It's actually the best. There's only one reason why 3 cards is important, and that's because I can then Ultra Ball for a Shaman. So it's like support on top of support.
Paul.
This card is a good response to things like N and the new Ilima supporter that we may be seeing coming up. But the less we have access to being able to burn the hand down, the worse this card gets, because 3 cards is only 3 cards. We only have Ultra Ball, really. I mean, we've got...
That's all you need, baby!
Yeah, I suppose, but this card might be better in Expanded, where they have access to Computer Search and Battle Compressor, but in that format, it may not be worthwhile to run it because it may be too slow. I'm not too sure, because we unfortunately don't have Expanded over here, so we don't have as much experience in the matter, but I like the card.
I am playing this in Volcanion. Like, Volcanion is the worst culprit of getting, like, N to 2 and then you lose. Like, every time. You're like, that's fine. All I need is, like, 1 energy or something like that, because you've dropped all your Shamans already.
Volcanion will be good with it, because that is a deck where you could burn your hand down because of Steam Up. So, yeah, that is a good place to use it.
And it's like a last ditch attempt, because usually it's just energy that you need the last bit, or maybe Alessandro or something. This card's going to help a lot. Like, and then you're on Skyfield anyway.
While ends in format, I think this is good. Might even be worth a spot in the Gardevoir decks, just because like you can drop a lot of Pokemon there, and then just like draw your hands up, and then you just
I'd keep it on the bench if you could. Keep this thing on the bench, and then when you get Angus, it's just an attempt to stop N. That's all it is. But like it's still really good at doing that. That's a basic, so it's like yay.
Yeah, cards absolutely fantastic. It's going to see a play in an excessive amount of decks.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, moving on. Ilma, the supporter. Both
what a babe.
shuffle their hand into their deck. Both players then flip a coin. If heads, the player draws 6 cards, and if tails, they draw 3. Paul, you've been talking about this. Is it good?
No, I've been talking about the Kukui, but I did briefly bring this card up. But it's a bad card right now, because we have N, we even have Ace Trainer. They're more reliable cards. This is a flip, and when the flip could potentially determine you nuking yourself and giving your opponent a fresh hand of 6, I'd much rather just play N, because I know what I'm getting myself into. Or I'd even prefer to play Judge. Like, I don't think this card should be played right now. Maybe later. Maybe when we move to Sun and Moon. By then, hopefully we've got better supporters.
That's the thing. You're like, you shouldn't play it, but then I'll pair some Randy in like the first round. They're like Melbourne, and they'll like eliminate me in the 3. And I'll get so tilted. I'll just be like, why are you playing this?
Well,
why
Alex,
am I losing?
Maybe you should just not be on bottom tables on the first round, my friend.
Oh man,
it's okay,
just
then you draw Ultra Ball and Oranguru, and you just...
Oh yeah,
yeah, there you go.
Oranguru, please.
Alright,
I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Oranguru because it's an orangutan. So if we stop calling Oranguru, otherwise I'll literally just kill myself.
Okay, that's fair, but as long as everyone can start calling Garbodor and Eviltal, then maybe we'll start calling Oranguru.
I think you mean Yveltal and Garbodor. Anyway, we're moving on. Alright, we're going through these last ones quick. Professor Kukui, Paul's favorite card. Draw 2 cards.
It sure is.
During your turn, your opponent's attack deals plus 20 damage to your
You
opponent's
mean your attacks deal plus 20 damage to your opponent's active?
Yes. Everyone.
Because I don't want my opponent doing more damage to me.
Everyone in the game. The person next to you, they deal 20 that turn as
Oh,
well.
that's fine, as long as they beat.
Yeah, pretty good, I guess. I don't know in what situations Giovanni is still played consistently, but perhaps in this new 2-shot format, as Paul mentioned, we might be seeing some Professor Kokui. Paul, here's
Yeah, I
your
think this
chance.
card. Yeah, no, I think this card is one of the more balanced cards we've seen. Like, people might discuss playing Giovanni Scheme because it can draw up to 5, but the thing is, right, this card here, I mean, given the hand sizes at the moment, we've already discussed how difficult it can be to draw up to 3 with Oranguru in certain circumstances. This card also allows you to get that +20 while you draw, so you don't have
Oh yeah,
to
this seems
really
like
make
way
a
better than Giovanni.
I feel like it is, and it
Oh,
also
it's way
gets a
better.
full art. So I would probably play Kukui, but like +20 is relevant, especially because we no longer have Muscle Band. The 2 cards is a nice little bonus, and I like the fact that we're seeing this shift away from the discard your hand and draw 7 supporters, because, well, Professor Kukui would have been it if we had that, and it doesn't look like they're trying to bring that back. So I really like this card for many reasons. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually like hand pass. Literally what Paul said is probably what I'd say as well. Just move on.
I agree. Team
Fair call.
Skullgrunt supporter. Look at your opponent's hand and discard 2 energy cards you find there.
I really like this card.
This card
Card's
is
bad, but it's really funny.
This is like I would like not run Delinquent in your Vettel Mirrors and run this card instead because I feel like it almost does the same thing.
I think
Like
it's
you
almost
just
better.
want you just want to get rid of their energy in your Vettel Mirror because it's like, oh, they're out of energy, I win. Like, and then it's energy, so it can be like specials as well. Could you imagine if this was around with Night March?
Yeah, but they
No.
have 4 energy in the deck, so it's unlikely that they're going to have it in their hand. And plus, they still
Yeah.
have Puzzler Time and Special Charge, so it wouldn't really bother them that much. Let's be real.
We do have special charge still, yeah.
It's
But
not
Exactly.
popular though, special charge at the moment. Perhaps if this card starts to take off, special charge might be more common.
one deck I feel like you could definitely punish is Greninja because they're always like they want to Shuriken, but they keep that 1 energy in their hand because it's the one they're popping with where its attack's called not Midnight
Moonlight
Slash. What's the
Slash.
other one? Moonlight Slash, yeah. But you can punish them with this thing because they usually only keep that 1 energy in their hand or max 2, and you just get rid of them both. And then they're like, oh, they'll have to either Sycamore their whole hand.
The good thing about this card, it's always great to see disruption cards, especially because the format is so vast, and being able to specifically target strategies in a meaningful way is very important for the health of card games. So yeah, this card's very good. I look forward to seeing it played against me. Absolutely.
Every time I play it, I'll play the Team Skull theme. I love the Team Skull theme.
Can't wait to hear it.
Timer ball. Item. Flip 2 coins. For each head, search your deck for an evolution Pokemon and put them in your hand. A card specifically designed for these Forest of Giant Plants style, perhaps even Greninja style decks. What do you guys reckon? Paul first.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've seen Dual Ball back in the past work really nicely. Timer Ball might have a similar effect in that we might see this card played constantly. At worst, it's an item card that gets you nothing, but on average, you're generally going to get 1 evolution almost for free. So I like the card. I don't know that it'll be a 4 of. And again, we have seen decks such as the Blastoise Keldeo deck back in the 2013 era, which usually people would run generally 4 Ultra Ball and not really a whole lot else. I mean, you have more evolutions now. I think this card is designed for decks that are going to be evolution heavy as opposed to having 1 evolution chain with support in it. So look forward to it there. But if there's only really 1 evolution line, you may still see the standard 4 Ultra Ball. Yeah, good card, solid card. Don't know that it'll be everywhere though.
Alex.
Oh, I'm going to play this in that Laurentiis Solgaleo deck I've been hyping.
Oh my gosh.
You don't really want to run Shaman in a deck like that because if you already get the GX attackers, you're like, well, they're going to give up 2 prizes and you don't want to just let them have the Shaman. So you'd rather just be like, okay, well, I'll just try and draw into the line I want with my 1 supporter for the turn and still run 4 Ultra Balls because you also want some energy in the discard for your first turn, but then you can run like 2 or 3 copies of this. That's just extra support. So you Ultra Ball for the basics. And then this thing can become really, really clutch since you've got a stage 2 and a stage 1. Because this can search a GX. Can't, yeah, because well, it's stage 1 GX anyway, so.
It doesn't exclude GXs.
Actually, yeah. I think it's definitely not a card for the already established decks in our format, but that's because they still heavily rely on Shaman. So another card laying the groundwork for when that card rotates.
Alright guys, we're down to our last two cards now. So we're going to talk about Repel. Your opponent switches their active Pokemon with one of their benched Pokemon. So like half an escape rope. What do you guys think?
Card's garbage. Like, really, we've had a card like this before, Pokemon Circulator, and that card did not see play. We have Pokemon Catcher currently in the format, and I'm pretty sure it even got reprinted, or it's supposed to be reprinted in our English set. And I would much rather still just play that. We have Lysandre, which guarantees, and you don't always need your supporter for the turn to Sycamore or something. That's why Lysandre is still played in decks. This card should not be used. I would highly recommend people do not touch this card.
Paul's just like full on savage.
It is a terrible card. We've seen effects like this before, and it has no place in the metagame. Catcher wasn't in format.
There's only one card. There's only one card where I'd use Repel, and that's combined with the Toxapex that's in this set.
But
Toxapex is in play whenever your opponent's active Pokemon. Oh no, it's for free. No, I thought that was being clever. I concur with Paul. Card is trash.
Alright, card sucks. Moving on. Last card, Decidua GX, 240 HP grass Pokemon. Its ability, once during your turn, you may put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. Its attack is grass double colors for 90 damage, and its GX attack is a single grass energy and put 3 cards from your discard pile into your hand. Alex, what do you think about Decidua GX?
I'll try and scroll. Ooh, 3 cards from your discard. That's pretty good.
That's pretty good. All right, Paul.
It was like the only card I didn't know about. I'm literally reading this for the first time. Every other card I'd read before, I hadn't read this one.
All right, we'll let Paul go first then. Paul, what do you reckon?
This is another one of those, if when Forest of Giant Plants rotates, it will be bad cards, I feel. Its 90 damage attack is vanilla for 90. That doesn't even come close to 2 shots. Not in this format that's going to be coming up. Its ability is decent, especially with the ability to use Devolution Spray, Puzzle of Time, and Forest of Giant Plants, dropping 2 damage counters constantly. But it's a fair bit weaker than Serena in the sense that you're probably not going to clear their field by doing that alone. So you need to follow up with an attacker of sorts. Now, its GX attack, I don't think is great, as weird as that might sound, because you put them into your hand. You can't use them instantly. I mean, you will get them back for later use, but your opponent can just very easily respond with N or Ace Trainer or even Judge or even Iloma if they're playing that for whatever reason. There are too many ways to disrupt the hand to make that GX attack worth being your GX attack of use. I think it's a mediocre card at best.
I think the ability is really strong. And we'll definitely see some play in some form. It might see play in Expanded as well. I think the card's really good. 90 damage is, it's not bad. And the ability to recycle important cards, perhaps disruption cards, is very strong. All right, guys. I want to thank you if you've made it this far.
Thanks, GX.
We'll ignore him.
Already have the promo in English, Alex. People know.
Yep, it's legal for play. There were those people who played it at the. Did they play it at Dallas Regionals?
Yes.
I think they did.
How? Draw 3 cards.
All right, guys. I want to thank you for joining us this evening if you've made it this far. It's been an hour and a half worth of podcast. I really appreciate it.
Look at these center roll art. That's sick.
All right, guys. My name is Bodhi Cutler. You've been joined by Paul Coletta and Alexander Bray. Alex,
for what is left of Alexander Bray.
I think Alex is done.
Nope. Nah, he's good.
I'm just
he's lost it.
I thought so.
I bet you are. All right, take it easy, guys.
Thanks for
having
listening
us.
to the Scoundrel Ring podcast this evening. We'll see you guys soon.